Hello and welcome, Goldie, to our first M2C podcast. Extremely excited to have this wonderful guest here today. Just an honor. It's really truthfully an honor to be in the presence of someone who focuses on building leaders in the world and society. And that's a huge part of entrepreneurship is developing the leader within ourselves to go out there and duplicate and create and impact people in the world. But a little bit of an intro to Goldie. Her passion is setting people up for success in their careers, especially when it comes to leadership. I believe leaders need more than just a title. They need a support system that provides a safe space for learning, honest guidance, and practical tools to help them succeed in leading others. Too often, people are promoted with a congratulations but are left to navigate leadership on their own, sometimes picking up poor habits or struggling in silence. I want to change that by being the resource leaders can rely on to grow in confidence, capable, and effective leaders. Right from Goldie's mouth herself. That's I wanted to share that. And Goldie, if you could touch a little bit on that and share a little bit more details, that'd be amazing. But thank you for
Yeah.
coming on our first call.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you. I welcome any chance to talk about this. I truly believe in setting people up for successful leadership roles. Now, I'm going to caveat that is in our life, we're all leaders to some degree. Whether we're running a business, whether we're in an organization, whether we're in our households, it doesn't matter. But what I noticed, and over my 30 plus year career, in different positions is that, I always was like, great, I got a promotion. Woohoo! Then it's crickets. How do I learn this stuff? And I'm a very big proponent of education and self-learning and things like that. So I took it upon myself. I taught myself, and boy, did I learn some bad habits. Corrected many of them, I think. Anyway, but as I became more experienced, I started looking around me and I'm like, oh, it's still happening. Like, you know, Jimmy over there got a great promotion and here he is leading a team of five or more people. And I'm looking, I'm like, oh my God, he's making the same mistakes I did. This is not going to turn out well. And it just kind of got me thinking. I'm like, there needs to be a system in place. So I was in a leadership role at an organization, a big organization, and they had an in-house leadership program, which included one-on-one coaching. It was a whole year. I got this coach, and I'm like, oh my God, everybody needs a coach. This is like the magic. And so halfway through this program, my coach's name was Marty. I said, Marty, I'm in the wrong job. He's like, what do you mean? I was in tech and I was taking this leadership training, and I'm like, no, I'm in the wrong job. What I learned through Marty's coaching was that was the piece that was needed, the support, the guidance, the I don't know what the word would be. It was just like the aha magic piece that every leader should have. So from there, I finished the program and I thought, I'm going back to school. I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn about this. And so I ended up going to Royal Roads and took their executive graduate certificate in executive coaching. And shortly after that, I'm like, yeah, I want to do this on a bigger scale. And the organization that I was with, while they did believe in development and coaching, they didn't really want to put it in practice, and that's okay. That's their choice. I just said, I'm going on my own. I'm gonna change the corporate landscape and help people when they get into these roles or want to get into these roles be more prepared, have that foundation. And some of the things we'll probably talk about today, or I think we will, is a lot of the things I'm going to talk about are really foundational pieces that we use every day. We just don't necessarily equate them to the leadership, or we may or may not have the refinement. And Kirby, I'm going to say something you said to me when we met a couple of weeks ago. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think you said I put the right words in the wrong sentences. You can have the best of intentions. You can think you're saying all the right things, but with nobody there to offer you any feedback, any mentorship, any guidance, you put the right words in the wrong sentences.
That's awesome. Kirby, did you want to say it? I know she kind of shared that on that last point.
We had a short window of chatting. That would definitely be one of the components that I've been working with now for some time. And leadership would help guide that tool. I call it a tool because when you're leading people, emotions, getting your team empowered versus deflated is important. And I've come to accept with my mentorship that I've been blessed with that if you start using words in an emotional way, it helps stimulate conversation. Naturally, it could start arguments, but that's not the intent. I think in any leadership, you're okay with a good brainstorming session, whether it's marketing, whether it's HR, whether it's accounting. Uh, Having a healthy discussion, which could be described as an argument, there's merit in it. But having the tools to understand what it is you're trying to accomplish is where leadership and I smiled when you brought up that memory because I truly believe I've gotten a gift with understanding if I use the wrong word by accident, they just didn't understand what I tried to say. So they trigger me and I go, whoa, whoa, maybe wrong choice of words. I don't remember how far we went that night, Goldie, but I like using the word nice. I like using the word Glenn got a better memory than me, and me and Glenn has been doing this as I think mentors to each other. Is certain words in the English language or any language that matter, it's very interpretable. And if you trigger somebody, it's really just you put the wrong word in the right sentence. You're trying to explain yourself as a leader or as a even a follower. It can work as a follower because I'm a firm believer more brains are stronger than one brain. And that's how I look at my companies that I'm a part of is I want everybody involvement, whether you think it's I'll use the wrong terminology again, a stupid idea. I don't think there's any stupid ideas. Bring it forth, and then let the team mull it over. And it's amazing some of the successes that come out of this type of leadership.
You're reiterating one of the key, I consider, competencies of leadership, that self-awareness, being aware of your triggers, of your feelings. And some people, and I've had this said to me, oh, I'm not getting into feelings. Well, hang on a second. We need to get into feelings because if we're triggered by something, we're going to have a reaction. There's an emotional reaction. We're all human beings here. And so one of the core competencies of leadership is being aware of yourself, not just where you are, but what are you feeling right now? Did somebody raise their voice? Did that trigger you? Me personally, I'm sensitive to volume of voices. I've had to train myself to realize that some people just talk loud. Some people maybe have a hearing deficiency and they speak loud because they're hard of hearing. And so I'm like, okay, whoa, this person is talking loud. And I could feel it in my body right away. And I'm like, okay, just calm down, just relax. Ask a clarifying question. Are you speaking loudly? Because I'll say the other piece to this is it's the vulnerability to be okay to say, ask that question. Or, you know, Glenn, I really, when you said that, I just kind of not sure if I took that the right way. Being okay to say, I didn't get that, or I feel like maybe you're yelling at me. I don't know. But being vulnerable is another core competency of leadership.
Unbelievable. You just brought up like so many like self-awareness and vulnerability. For me, those components are so linked, but yet so different. I want to share this story with you. Um, I've got three kids. Just recently, I had quite the growing moment with my oldest daughter. And I had this epiphany after it took me like 3 days to emotionally disconnect from the episode. So for 3 days, I was completely emotionally attached to what had happened. It took me 3 days before I came out of it. And I had this beautiful epiphany of, I don't believe any parent sits out to spoil their kids. And that's self-awareness part of it, I think. And then maybe vulnerability, because now it's my daughter. I'm trying to lead her. I don't think there's any difference. And the irony is that one of her triggers with me when it all started was she says, Dad, it's okay for you to do this at work, but maybe not okay to do it at home. So that was the emotional trigger for me. And it took me 3 days to process it. And then it came down to, I can't be any different. I'm the same person. I'm the same person at work. I'm the same person at home. Now I've got the challenge of she's my oldest daughter, and she made me a dad from the very beginning. Now she's at a stage of her life where I think she's needing different things from leadership. And I had this epiphany of, I explained to her, I got a little upset with some of the wording, some of the wrong words put in the right sentence, maybe. When I came out, it was, I explained to her that, you know, I could never spoil you, but if a child shows unappreciative or not humble, you can feel as a parent that you spoiled them, and that is very powerful. And I just had to share that story because it's a true life story. It only happened within the last month. And vulnerability, obviously, I think you can accept when you're dealing with your kids. It is probably one of the single-handed biggest problem I think parents versus kid got is that vulnerability, because we end up getting into a quick argument with family members, especially father daughter, because you just don't understand, right? These are the things that come out, and so yeah, self awareness took me 3 days. It took me 3 days to deal with it on an emotional side, which sometimes it doesn't take that long because through leadership and mentors in my life, it helped me realize how don't be vulnerable. Ask if somebody's using a tone. So you used an example of airing. I call that the tone effect. Tone can really change the impression of what you're trying to verbalize to people. Like some people, I've experienced it in my team. If I get so excited, my tone goes to this level, they shut down. They literally shut down. Like they stop listening or hearing. And then I catch myself and I'm like, oh, wait. I think my excitement triggered you. Let's pick back up. So again, very valid leadership components because sometimes we're just naive enough to not notice it.
Oh, this is already some great communication here. I want to touch base on a few things. I know recently I've read a couple leadership books, Five Levels of Leadership by John Maxwell, being one of them. And we are all leaders, like Goldie said in the very beginning, whether we're parents, friends, owning a business, it's all and you know what, the five levels of leadership, we're always classified with each different person in that level. Like it could be you have three kids, Kirby, you could be a different level with each kid. And that's just the reality of it, right? And it's understanding, recognizing, being aware, and having the vulnerability to talk about it. Goldie, there's one thing I want to just go back to just a little bit because, you know, a huge part of our podcast is entrepreneurs and like-minded people looking to get out there in society, build businesses, and do things like that. There's a lot of people nowadays that are thinking that they can learn from YouTube or ChatGPT or all of these things, and then they can go be a coach or they can go and do this stuff, right? Maybe stuff
Mhm.
that you've seen. What was the real benefit of going to school to learn being a coach?
Mm. Uh, Great question. And you're right. There's a lot of people out there that use the term coach. They're a coach. They're this and that, and it's used in different ways. For me, going back and getting formal education and also continuing my education, because in order for me to maintain my certification, I have to have X number of hours in actual training and education. But it taught me the
Yeah.
importance of removing myself from the conversation and making it about the other person. As Kirby just kind of shared in his story, we all kind of have emotions. We're human beings, right? And we can get into a conversation or a story from somebody and quickly throw out our opinion or our ideas or our thoughts. Learning to be a coach taught me to kind of separate that and put it about the person and ask those curious questions and make it all about them, regardless of my feelings. I park those when I'm in a coaching conversation. My opinions, my feelings, not that they don't matter, they do, but they're irrelevant in that coaching conversation. It's about that person. They come to me seeking assistance to get from where they are now to go forward. And so I help them with that. That was the other really big takeaway as well is understanding the difference between coaching, consulting, counseling slash therapy. They're very different. And sometimes they can get very close in crossing over. And so, me being aware of that and being trained, I'm able to say, hold on a second. I feel like we might be going into more of a therapy type of conversation. I can refer this or suggest this, but let's go back to where we need to go and into the coaching space. So some of those practices is really important. If you think about it, people are coming to a coach because they want to resolve something in their life. You have a huge impact to people. This is serious stuff. And, putting your hand up saying, I'm a coach without training, without proper education, you're messing with people's lives here. And I take that very seriously. The other component is the confidentiality. If any of us have ever went to a therapist or a counselor of any kind, we go with that intent that we're in a safe space. There's trust. Everything that we say will be held sacred. And I'm not suggesting that everybody out there breaches that. What I am saying, though, is being an ICF certified coach, I am held to a certain level of ethics that if I do not adhere to them, I lose my license. And it's very important. That being aside, my own personal ethics is so deeply ingrained that it's not my place to share other people's stories. So I hold confidentiality in a big way. But yeah, those are a couple of the key things that I feel you get from the education. Now, I'm going to caveat that I went to Royal Roads. I'm not suggesting that some of the other programs out there for coaching is better. I haven't taken them. I think just having that good foundational skills built to be a coach is where you start.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that, Goldie. Hey, Glenn, we haven't heard from you yet, so let's see where your head's at. How's everything going on your end?
Oh, life is good. I'm interested in that part right off the bat. This leadership role. When Kirby mentioned his story and what you mentioned, I'd like to have some sort of from the perspective of adaptation versus standardization in a leadership when you're trying to lead groups in a leadership role. You want your team to adapt, but you also have standards that you have to maintain. So I'm interested, Goldie. How do you see the correlation there?
Love it. As leaders, we need both. We need to be able to pivot because things are constantly changing around us. We all know our world is on supersonic speed these days. Business is no different. At the same time, I think standardization comes into play when we talk about processes, best practices, and what are our guiding principles, if you will, for our businesses. What is our point where we're like, no, I don't go down that road. This is not who we are. Or questioning the status quo. Sometimes standards are great, yet we always have to question if they're still working for us. And that's where the adaptation can come into play a little bit more. It's like, we've done it this way for 10, 15, 20 years. It's working. Why change it? Why not change it? Let's question that. Is it still meeting our goals? Is it still meeting the objective? That's the standardization piece that needs some flexibility. But the adaptation is an interesting one because as leaders, we're working with all kinds of people, all kinds of personalities, all kinds of needs. We've almost got to be chameleons.
That was
Yeah. Yeah. And how do we balance our own needs, our own boundaries, while still being a leader to the other person, respecting their needs, their desires, their styles, if you will? You're constantly juggling. You are constantly paying attention.
Yeah, because there's also societal effects, right?
Yeah.
There's changes in technology and government and society is moving in this direction. Technology is moving in that direction, and it affects everybody on a personal and professional level.
It does. And technology is a really interesting one. And I have a lot of opinions that I'm not going to get in on it. But I've got 25 years of working in tech. And I believe technology is a good tool. And I'll stress the word, it's a tool.
Mm-hmm.
It's meant to be used appropriately. Things like AI. I think it's great. I do use AI at times. But it's not going to replace the human interaction. It cannot. And so we need to be very conscious about when is it appropriate to use the tools that we have and when is it appropriate to have that human type of interaction. I'm not so sure that we've all got it figured out, that balancing act. But it raises the question, and coming back to that self-awareness again, am I questioning yourself? Am I using this tool correctly? Am I using it appropriately? Am I meeting the needs? And answering the question for yourself.
And the goal orientation leads you in a certain direction.
Yeah. Well, there's different level. When I think about goals, I think of our big goals, our organizational goals, our business goals. But those goals need to be broken down into small, bite-sized daily goals, weekly goals, monthly goals.
Build back up.
Exactly. So what do we need to do to meet those goals, to achieve them? We use some resources. Technology is one resource. People are another resource. And we need to figure out how to balance those two using things like curiosity, asking questions, and being okay with not having the answer for ourselves. Use our resources, our people. I've got this goal. How do we achieve it?
The corporate structure is just monetary. Well, doesn't adaptation, standardization get sort of taken out of the equation, doesn't it?
I debate that one with you. If you want money, you need the best standards, you need the best people to make it all happen. Otherwise, you won't be able to sustain. You might get money up front. You might achieve that one goal where I've made that, X number of dollars. That's your goal. Are you able to make it the next year and then the year after? That's where the people are going to come into play. The sustainability piece is where you need the standardization.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you, Glenn. I knew you were going to bring some fire there in the conversation. So there's this question I'm always asking myself is, what do I need to forget what I think I know to let in what I don't know? I'm always asking myself that question because or we're stuck in the ways of we've done this for 25 years. We're going to keep doing it because why not? But what if you had to forget everything you thought you knew to then let in everything you don't know? That's going to cause you to think differently because that's all it is our mind. I do want to ask one question. You mentioned leaders sometimes pick up poor habits. What are some examples of these habits and how do you think people unlearn them?
I would say one poor habit is micromanaging. And I see this a lot because I work a lot with what we call subject matter experts, SMEs, who transition into leadership. So they're very well versed in their jobs. They might be a technical role, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. And then they get into this role where they're managing people, and having them be able to release their abilities and knowledge of that highly technical role and shift into managing people, it's very hard. And I see a lot of that micromanagement where I know I can do it, so I'm just going to do it. Or I know I can get it done in 5 minutes, and that person's probably going to take an hour, so I'll just do it because it's 5 minutes. I'll save us time. I'll save us money, blah, blah, blah. Horrible. So how do you break that particular habit? Working with a coach can help, and being aware of it and questioning, why is it I don't want to let that person do that? Is there a trust issue here? What's going on? Questioning that, and then being able to take small steps. Every habit can be broken with small intentional steps. There's a person that takes a half hour to run a report. It takes me 5 minutes. Today, I'm not going to run that report just once, one little bit. Maybe next week, I won't do it twice, something like that. So that's one habit. The other one that I've noticed is avoiding difficult conversations, or in Goldie terms, avoiding crunchy conversations, because they're not necessarily difficult. You just feel uncomfortable. People, and I've seen this over and over again, they go into this, meeting room and they got to talk about this, or maybe at somebody's desk, and they're skirting it. They're putting every fluff word they can around it instead of just getting to the point. I've got some tools that I help people or offer people to use, but things like, identify first of all what the problem is or what the challenge is, and let's face it head on. Taking, again, compassionate, empathetic, curiosity. Kirby, in your story earlier, with your daughter, You had the best of intentions. It just didn't come out. Now, taking that same mindset when you have to have a crunchy conversation, where's that person's perspective coming from? So tell me, why did you say come from that perspective? I didn't quite get it. Help me connect the dots. That curiosity-based approach can help shift and get more comfortable with the crunchiness of it and just say, you know what, I wonder if, or can you tell me if, or tell me about this. And then it becomes more of a collaborative conversation versus me versus you type of thing. That's another one. Another big one, and this is not just in corporate, this is across the planet now, I find, relying on email too much as your main form of conversation. Now, I'll say email, but texting, email, it doesn't matter what it is. Oh my God, people, think about what it is you need to communicate. Not everything should be done in an email. Can you imagine, Kirby, if you sent your daughter an email based on, the story you showed? It probably wouldn't land very well. Remember, email is how we interpret it when we read it. So we need to really question it, right?
I got to jump in on that one. We read tone into texting and emails.
Yes.
We do it. We try not to, but I see it myself. I see it in everybody. It's so valid. So valid.
It is. So questioning ourselves, what is the message I want to get across? And really, you can't put tone or emotion in an email. If you're relying on that, then you need to pick up the phone, speak into it, or go face to face or whatever. I'm even going to go as far as say, even over Zoom or some sort of video conferencing, you have to be very, very careful because you're not going to be able to relay everything through a screen. There's body language, there's everything that you're missing. So we have to be very, very conscious about that. The other thing is, and this ties into another leadership competency, is relationship building. If we're communicating with email, we're not building relationships. We're just firing words across the internet. We need to build relationships as well with people. We're human beings. We're designed for interaction. Get out of the email, use it when appropriate. It's a tool, like Glenn and I were just saying. It's a tool, it's a resource, but it's not your only one. So use it wisely. And just finally, I'll say the other habit is more around that emotion, the reaction of reacting instead of leading. And I'm going to say an example of this is you're in a situation where something's going sideways. It's maybe a crisis, maybe it's an emergency, and suddenly it's like, oh my God, I'm moving, I'm yelling, I'm doing all this stuff. Stop. Take a breath. You've got to lead people now. You need to influence people, and your emotion will flow. So if you're showing up super high energy that could be perceived as, yelling or whatever, or if you're highly stressed and you're wound like a tight spring, you're projecting that. Your team will absorb that. So guess what? They're going to react too, and maybe not the way you want them to. Calm, cool, and collected is what I always say to people. Not to take away your own feelings, because we have to recognize how we're feeling, but be mindful that there are resources for you as a leader to use to kind of unload that, such as coaching, therapy, some trusted space. You have to be very mindful of what you're doing with the team while still balancing it with vulnerability.
Wow. It's yeah, I think everybody's a little speechless, but bring in one extra person, totally cool. But no, you know what? We got about 20 minutes left in the podcast here, but Goldie, how are some ways that people could come to you to be a coach? Like, do you have a website? Do you have anything like that going on?
I do. I'm not all over the social media channels. I use one social media channel, which is LinkedIn, and then I have my website. So it's www.havesolutions, Have solutions.ca. And on LinkedIn, it's just my name, so people can reach out to me there. And yeah, that's the two primary methods. I like to keep my life relatively simple when it comes to technology. As I've said, I use resources appropriately, what works for me.
No, that's awesome. I definitely want to do a plug there. I know hearing everything that you're sharing right now, I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna be like, "Hey, I would love to meet Goldie and get that kind of interaction going." But yeah, let's pass over to Kirby real quick.
If we only got less than 20 minutes, I'd like to see if we can get a free session out of Goldie with Glenn. I'd like to compare goals and trust in leadership versus risk analysis. I find my good friend Glenn, I look up to him, he's my mentor, but there's days when he really struggles with risk analysis on decision making as a leader. So I don't know if I said that right. You can ask the.
You probably put the wrong word in the right place.
You could go now, Glenn. Do you understand where I'm coming from, Glenn?
No.
I believe Goldie would be a great asset to this conversation piece because I've been trying to convince
Well,
you.
yeah, okay, but because my question be I'll lead back into that because I was going to ask Goldie, like, in our profession, do you get requests where the leaders and the team participate all together, or it's basically from the top down or from the bottom up, or is
Mm.
there a combination that works? Or
Great question. I do one-on-one coaching with all levels of leadership. So I've had CEOs right down to frontline leaders, literally steel-toed boots and hard hats on, and we do one-on-one. Then I've also done some small group. One particular group that I really enjoy is having the individual that's getting the coaching with their leader in the room. So a triad. So myself, their
yeah.
leader, and the coachee. And it's a great opportunity to have that sort of personalized and address key issues. There is team coaching, bigger team coaching. I wouldn't say that is where I really gravitate to. I tend to be more of the personalized small groups. But yeah, there's kind of lots of different approaches as well, Glenn. Like, let's hypothetically say you had a team of, I don't
Like
know,
this
five or
this
six.
this, this team right here, actually.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
got a leader, Sir Anderson, and let's get into now. We can get into his question, right?
yeah. Okay, so Kirby, say more about your question.
Yeah.
Okay, data collecting is a good form of a risk analysis as a leader. You need to collect more data to be able to analyze the risk or the action that may be required. So in this case, my good friend Glenn, it's like he's always missing data. He's got himself stuck in this loop of he's got great data, but there's got to be more. So I'm going to sit and wait as a leader till I get more data. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I want to compare risk analysis versus leadership and making a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you get there? Well, in this case, it's data input. Data input as a leader. So whether it's 5 of us in the room and we're gathering information so we can come back with a valid answer, or in this case, I don't know, making a new business corporation like M2C.
Mm-hmm. So I love this. And I'm not going to put words in your mouth, Glenn, and I'm not going to insinuate this. I'm just going to speak as if the possibilities here.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's different risk tolerances between Kirby and yourself, Glenn. Kirby, your risk tolerance might be whatever it is. And Glenn, you might be less risk tolerant, where you like all the data. You almost, again, I'm not putting words in here, but it's like, I want all the possible information to almost guarantee an outcome that I'm looking for. What will you two need to do to kind of come to that compromise where Kirby's needs are met and your needs are met to meet that? The other piece that I would explore with you, Glenn, is what's making you uncomfortable about making that decision? Or what does risk mean to you? And what about it drives you to have that positive outcome? What's going on there? And you're on a podcast, you don't need to answer it. Just some questions for you to think about. What causes you to want the answers, that clarity right from the beginning?
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Okay, good. And Kirby, kind of the same question for you is, where's your risk tolerance?
What drives him over the hedge?
Yeah. What pushes you?
I can save it for later. It is a podcast, but I need to stimulate with using the wrong word in the right sentence. And I'm going to use the word speculation. I'm a very high risk taker compared to Glenn, let's say, and we're not measuring it. We're just going to say either I'm lower or higher. So right now I'm going to say I'm higher in this situation, but I don't like speculation data coming in. Whereas Glenn is potentially, in this case, a lower risk taker, but thrives on speculation.
Ah, interesting.
And we sometimes collide. Actually, collide would be like this, because I'm like, no, that's just speculation. He's like, nope, it's data. Well, where did you get your data from? Right.
Okay.
So these are the components that I feel I need to work on. Right. I need to accept speculation as true data.
Yeah, well, yesterday I got my data from the Bible, so I don't know how we validate that.
He gave me homework. He gave me homework last night before we sat for supper and said grace. He knows that we say grace as a family. We had to watch this podcast before we sat for supper because it was very valid. The data was right from the Bible, but it relates to this subject line that brings up the word speculation.
Well, speculate, like we could define the word speculation. Both of us are looking at the same thing, and my data I think is concrete, and you think my data is speculative, right? Based on where it is speculation because I'm basing my data on as I see society in the world 5 years out. So it is speculative in that manner. You're taking your data based on the world we operate in today. And that's very valid because it is a reflection of the reality of today. Now, my reality is different because my reality is 5 years down the road and it's different from the reality of today.
So what would be a compromise for the two of you?
Well, no, we're hashing it out. And I'm realizing I go into Kirby's world and I try and find fault in his argument. He comes into my world and tries to find fault in my argument, and we're going to go through a process of elimination. I feel.
Okay, so you two are communicating, asking questions. Glenn, where'd you find this data? Did you just pull it out of the air, or where did it come from? Kirby wants that numbers, if you will, you know, based on the last 5 years, this is what we can project for the next 5 years.
Are based on the last 50 years or the last 100 years, last 5,000 years since the existence. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So in knowing that about Kirby, you can now have some information that you're like, okay, I know Kirby's going to need some numbers. What do I need to give Kirby to meet that his need? Kirby, for you, knowing how Glenn thinks, and it's a little more, maybe not as numbers driven, if you will. What leeway are you willing to sort of say, okay, I know Glenn's going to come back with some pretty concrete stuff, but I got to give some room there. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, because because this speculate that's a great word because speculation but it's hard to speculate on things that hasn't happened yet or never been tried. So it's hard to you can call it speculation, but if it's never been done and we haven't gone there yet, it is really speculation. But there's an asterisk beside the speculation, right?
Yeah, and so this is it's a really good topic because, again, what level of risk you both willing to address and set. And at the same time, I want to throw in another piece. Who has the final decision? Who's ultimately responsible and who's ultimately accountable to making that decision? Because we are talking smaller organizations, right? So what does that look like?
Yeah, it's not going to be who yells the loudest.
No. Yeah. No. So it's a conversation. Again, coming back to communication, right? It's a conversation, but it's clarity and respect and being clear with that. So I'm just going to throw this out there just for fun. It could be like Kirby's like, you know what, Glenn, I'm really, I'm going to give you rein to this point, but ultimately I reserved a right to say, no, it's not in the best interest of the company or something. Like I said, I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but you need that clarity. Kirby, all your employees need that clarity. They need to understand their boundaries so that you can release what you need to and let them do what they do best. And they need to understand when to, come to you or what's within their purview before they need to go, oh, hang on a second. So it's clarity.
I just like to jump in and sorry to cut you off because I know we're running out of time, but you triggered in me something Glenn and I has been working on together as partners, as mentors to each other, is decisions with conviction. Decisions with conviction is not always a blueprint or a standard. You've got the right to say, I need to collect more data. I like to refer to Glenn sometimes when he gets me triggered, he waffles. I forget what Glenn calls me, but again, we understand the concept. There is times in a conversation or times in a leadership where a decision needs to be made with conviction.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is lots of times where the decision doesn't need to be made immediately with conviction because you're debating it. You're still processing the thing. But if somebody is about to fall off the roof, you need to make a decision with conviction pretty quickly. Like you need to go save them. Whereas if it's like, you know what, the guy hasn't got on the roof yet. Let's talk about it a little bit. Let's try to figure out what would be the best plan. So that's kind of, I think, where me and Glenn really adapt very well to each other is that we clearly understand where decisions and conviction needs to fall in place. And a topic which can, you used the word earlier, pivot. It's a very big conversation in mine and Glenn's meetings is pivoting. Pivoting is the word that helps define adaptation. And just because you come into a conversation and you get more data, you can pivot and like, I don't have the same viewpoint now just because I got one little bit of tidbit of data from either that team or somebody else. Like there's 5 of us right now, right? So again, that's my viewpoint on mine and Glenn's relationship. We challenge each other when possible to help grow. I don't know what you call that. The basis line for the subject. It helps get grown because we try to learn more. Like bringing you in has been a great favor to me and our team because we're having these very powerful conversations. And
I'm just your insurance in a messed up world. I'm your insurance policy.
Yeah, I love it. At the end of the day, and I think to just kind of put a button in it, is we all make decisions at that moment in time based on what we know in that moment in time. And that's all we can do. We make the best decisions that we can. It means that 5 minutes later, a week later, a month later, it could change and we have to reflect on that. And that's where reflection comes in. And it's so important. We have to think back on what's worked for us and our teams in the past. What have we learned and what are we going to do differently based on those learnings? And through discussion, through, if we had that information a little bit earlier, that might have changed our decision. Okay, well, take that forward. That's all you can do. We can't change the past. We can only influence the future. You make the best decision you can at that point in time with the data that you know.
And the risk part, I think myself and Corey may be a little bit more conservative, but Dean and Kirby, they'll jump because they feel they've got the ability to handle the situation that comes, and that's a big plus, right?
Yeah. And you two or 4 of you, the 2 of you, 2 sets complement each other. You push each other's a little bit. It sounds like there's the boundaries pushing a little bit, or growing opportunities, right?
Growing
While
opportunity.
still respecting each other.
Thank
That
you,
was real quick
Goldie.
and dirty coaching, Kirby. Thank you.
Thank you, Goldie. I really like how people are going to be on this podcast expecting to hear a little bit about coaching and then all of a sudden see how it happens. And that's the reality. We learn more from observing sometimes than we do actually participating because it's not as many emotions in play, but you can compare it to a story in your life or a situation. And you're like, hey, how did I handle that? And you're learning from other leaders in the room because we're all leaders, like you said in the beginning of this, Goldie. So that's so exciting. Well, we're
Absolutely. Corey,
oh,
can
go
I
ahead.
just say one more thing? Because
Absolutely.
you just cued in and I'm like, this is important. Um, one of the things that makes my business unique is I do observational coaching. And so I'll do virtual some, but I also actually go with people to their location, wherever they are. I spend time with them. I actually shadow them and I give them that real time coaching in the moment, that feedback in the moment based on their goals. So I'll have a coachee that says, you know what, I want to work on interacting with my people. I want to have meaningful, intentional conversations. Okay, I got you. I'm on site. I travel to Saskatchewan every month. And I actually spend time with my coachees out in the field. I put on my hard hat, my steel toe boots, the whole 9 yards, and I'm there with them and I'll do it. I'll listen, I'll observe, and then privately after I'll say, hey, you remember when you said that to Jack over there? What if you would say that a little differently? That's where they're, like you said, the people are learning real time in the moment. That's what's magic there. It's not just me talking over a screen. I'm with you. I got your back.
Thank you for that closing point, Goldie. That is so amazing. And just for everybody else listening, if you didn't see halfway through, to see Goldie's website, it's www.havesolutions.ca, right? That's correct, Goldie?
You got it. Thank you.
Perfect, perfect. And there will be links for that available with the podcast as well too. So, thank you so much, Goldie, for coming on our first podcast and enjoying and sharing. And yeah, just Kirby's a great mind, Glenn, Dean, myself, and just such an honor to be with you here today.
It's my pleasure. It's been a whole lot of fun, which life's got to have fun.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much to you, Goldie. I want to do this again with a different topic. We'll cross that bridge when the time comes. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Reach
Yeah,
out
thanks, Corey.
anytime.
Appreciate it very much.
You're welcome.